Today, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt held a press conference during which she had the chance, as the woman who is speaking on behalf of the President of the United States, to quell the growing panic in this country about whether or not the United States is about to enter a new war with Iran. Instead, she delayed the press briefing, like her boss often does, gave half baked answers that showed she was clearly unprepared, and she dodged every single serious question about Donald's plans. In other words, she blew it. When asked directly about Donald's timeline for the action or lack thereof, Levitt gave this completely maddening response.
I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
So let's get this straight. After days of public posturing about an imminent decision and fear-mongering about the very real possibility that Donald Trump was going to get us into a war, we're supposed to wait 2 weeks to find out what is in his little head. Is he going to plunge us into a war? Is he not going to plunge us into war? There may or may not be negotiations for peace talks. This isn't some biopsy result. This is the possibility that the United States of America, with the most powerful fighting force on the planet, may be entering into a regional conflict that experts warn could spiral into World War III. We need answers now. Of course, Donald Trump is not known for honoring his deadlines.
I think you're going to find some very interesting items coming to the forefront over the next 2 weeks.
I'll be making a big decision over the next 2 weeks.
Sometime over the next 2 weeks. We'll be filing over the next 2 or 3 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I would say over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Nothing if not consistent. Just last month, he gave Russia 2 weeks to agree to Ukraine resolution, and then he pretended he never said it. Well, probably because no such resolution was reached. One reporter finally had the guts to call all of this out to Levits Face.
President Trump has said previously in regard to Russia, he's used this phrase about 2 weeks several times in terms of we expect like a 2-week deadline and then you give another 2-week deadline. How can we be sure that he's going to stick to this one on making a decision on Iran?
Well, in those deadlines, as you've seen in respect to Russia, Ukraine, might I add, these are two very different, complicated global conflicts, as you know, that the president inherited from our previous incompetent president in the weakness of the previous administration. And the president has spent a tremendous amount of time and effort cleaning up these crises that were caused by the last administration's just complete dereliction of duty on the world stage and American weakness.
Way to deflect, Levitt. I mean, to be fair, she's actually doing her job, which is to cover over the malicious incompetence of her boss by continuing to blame everything on his predecessor. Before we go on, just remember that we here at Mary Trump Media are not corporate media. We don't bend the knee, we're not for sale now, and we never will be. Every single day, we expose the lies the Trump regime tells and wants to keep buried. Independent media survives because of you. So please like and share our videos. And if you believe in our mission, subscribe to our channel. Since Levitt left us with no real answers at all about one of the most serious issues this country is facing, the press tried everything to dig up real intel. One reporter asked about the backlash Donald has been getting from his own base over his saber rattling on Iran. Levitt's response?
Rhino warmonger Lindsey Graham, he recently called on the U.S. to go all in.
That's quite the lead to a question.
Right. What's your message to everyday Trump supporters? Not the Tucker Carlsons or other big names, but everyday Trump supporters, grassroots who voted for President Trump to stop the wars, rejected this in the primary, going into another war with voting against Nikki Haley, and they want to see non-U.S. involvement in this war. What's your message?
Trust in President Trump. President Trump has incredible instincts, and President Trump kept America and the world safe in his first term as president in implementing a peace through strength foreign policy agenda. And with respect to Iran, nobody should be surprised by the president's position that Iran absolutely cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. He's been unequivocally clear about this for decades, not just as president, not just as a presidential candidate, but also as a private citizen.
I don't even know where to start, by the way. He kept Americans safe during his first term. Yes, tell that to the in excess of 400,000 Americans who died needlessly because of his incompetent handling of COVID. We should trust his instincts. You mean the guy who built 3 casinos on one block and basically bankrupted all of them? Trust the instincts of a guy who decided it was a good idea to sell Trump branded steaks at the Sharper Image catalog? Yes, that's the guy whose instincts we should trust. So let's talk about how this has been working so far. Donald told us to trust him on tariffs. This has led to economic chaos, whiplash policies, a broken supply chain, and skyrocketing inflation. Donald told us to trust him on COVID. That got us bleach injections and the aforementioned death of 400,000 Americans in the final days of his last term. And now he wants us to just trust him about whether or not he's going to enter into a conflict that is not ours and that could, as I said earlier, lead us to World War III. Then came the constitutional question. Can Donald launch a war without Congress? Take a look.
Iran has never been closer to obtaining a nuclear weapon.
And then if the U.S. were to take some type of military action, would the president go to Congress to seek war authority?
I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals. I gave you the statement from the president. He'll make a decision within 2 weeks.
Thank you, Karoline.
How is that a hypothetical? The guy is threatening to drag us into a war. I think the American people deserve to know whether or not he has that authority. And if he doesn't have that authority, is he going to do it anyway? Remember, under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, only Congress can declare war. The president of the United States can command the military, but not start a war on his own. And the War Powers Resolution of 1973 reinforces all of that. Any unauthorized military action must be approved by Congress within 60 days or it's illegal. So when Leavitt dodges that question, she's not just spinning, she is paving the way for Donald to break the law. So let's simplify it for you, Karoline. The answer to the question is no. And again, there's nothing hypothetical about this. It is Donald Trump who has been telling us for days that he is seriously considering entering into the conflict against Iran. While Donald demands blind loyalty, though, he's not even listening to his own members of his own regime. Leavitt said earlier in that clip that Iran has never been closer to developing a nuclear weapon. Donald's own intelligence agencies contradict that statement. When asked if Donald's views on Iran reflect official assessments, Leavitt offered this.
When the president says Iran is very close to a nuclear weapon, is he relying on U.S. intelligence or intelligence sharing from an ally to make that assessment?
It is a fact, and the United States government maintains this fact, that Iran has never been closer to obtaining a nuclear weapon.
Okay, well, Donald saying the government agrees with him on the threat that Iran is a greater threat than it's ever been. But this is not true. In fact, Donald's National Intelligence Director, Tulsi Gabbard, blatantly disagreed with this take. So either Donald is ignoring his own intelligence chief, or he's just inventing these threats out of thin air. Then came Leavitt's biggest lie of the day. When asked about Donald's long-term position on Iran, Leavitt insisted he's been consistent in his stance. Take a look.
Of weeks to complete the production of that weapon, which would of course pose an existential threat not just to Israel but to the United States and to the entire world. And that is something that the entire world, including countries like Russia, is in agreement with, that Iran should not and cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. And that's why the president believes that, and he's believed that, again, not just his political career but frankly his entire life.
Yes, yes, I'm sure Donald Trump has been thinking about Iran's nuclear capabilities since his toddlerhood. He's that deep, you know. He's that plugged into the whole national security thing. How about this? Let's go to the tape. In 2011, Donald accused President Obama of planning a war with Iran just to boost his poll numbers before the election.
Our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective. So the only way he figures that he's going to get reelected, and as sure as you're sitting there, is to start a war with Iran. Now, I'm more militant and more militaristic than the president. I believe in strength. But to start a war in order to get elected, and I believe that's going to happen, would be an
Wait a second. That peace-loving guy is more militant and militaristic than Barack Obama? Other than that, I mean, the insults, Donald's just writing them himself. Barack Obama has no ability to negotiate? Well, look who's talking. Because by that logic, Donald is not the master negotiator he claims to be. And of course, we all know that he couldn't negotiate his way out of a wet paper bag. So, Karoline Leavitt had a chance to bring clarity to an extraordinarily fraught situation in our geopolitics, right? She had a chance to assuage the anger of Donald's own base, who desperately does not want the United States to enter into this conflict. Instead, she gave us confusion, contradictions, and a lot of deflection, none of which helped turn the temperature on this very incendiary situation down. So, at a moment when the country not just needs, but absolutely deserves real answers, straightforward solutions to problems, the Trump regime is offering us nothing but spin. And they keep hoping we are not going to notice, but we are paying attention. And I think by that deer caught the headlights look on Levitt's face, she knows it. She knows how woefully unprepared she is to answer very straightforward questions because she knows just how woefully incompetent her boss is. Please take a second and like and share this video. Be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.